Hey there. Tonight, we're not stepping into throne rooms or battlefields. We're slipping through a smaller door, the one the servants use, the one that leads to smoky kitchens, cramped sleeping quarters, and the endless rhythm of work that kept the medieval castle alive. You won't find glory here, just long days, calloused hands, and the quiet dignity of people whose names were never carved in stone, but whose labor held up every tower, every feast, every lord who ever claimed the title. If this kind of slow, detailed history helps you unwind, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if it actually brings you peace. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always oddly comforting to know who else is drifting off to the hum of the past. So settle in, close your eyes if you'd like, and let's begin behind the stone walls, where the real life of a medieval castle unfolded. The castle looms on the hillside, gray stone against gray sky. From a distance, it looks like power made solid. Towers stretch toward the clouds. Banners snap in the wind. Walls thick enough to withstand siege engines rise from the earth like ancient bones. To the peasant in the field below, it's a symbol. To the traveling merchant, it's a landmark. To the knight riding home from a campaign, it's relief. But to the people who live and work inside, it's something else entirely. It's a house, a workplace, a prison sometimes, a family in a strange way, and most of all, it's never quiet. Before the sun breaks the horizon, the castle is already stirring. Not in the lord's chambers, not yet, but down in the kitchens, in the stables, in the cramped corners where servants sleep in groups of 3 or 4 on straw-stuffed pallets. A baker's apprentice no more than 12 years old stumbles barefoot across cold stone to light the ovens. His hands are raw from kneading dough the night before, but there's no time to tend them. Bread doesn't bake itself, and if the morning loaves aren't ready when the household wakes, someone will answer for it, probably him. In the stables, a groom yawns and pulls a cloak tighter around his shoulders. The horses shift and snort. There are 15 of them tonight, maybe 20. Some belong to the Lord, others to visiting knights who arrived late yesterday and will leave early tomorrow. Each one needs water, feed, grooming, and a clean stall. The groom knows every horse by temperament. The dappled mar bites. The black stallion kicks when startled. The palfrey in the corner stall whinnies if you forget to scratch behind her ears. He works in near darkness, guided by habit and the faint glow of a single tallow candle. Above in the great hall, the fire from last night still smolders. A young servant girl, maybe 14, kneels beside the hearth and coaxes it back to life. Her fingers are black with soot. Her dress, once brown, is now a patchwork of stained smoke and mended tears. She doesn't think about it. She thinks about the fire, about getting it hot enough before the steward arrives to inspect, about not burning herself again like she did last week. The scar on her wrist still aches in the cold. This is how the day begins in a medieval castle. Not with fanfare, but with the quiet scrape of tools, the shuffle of feet, and the low murmur of people who've learned to work in near silence. The castle doesn't wake all at once. It unfolds, layer by layer, as the servants move through their routines like clockwork. Except there are no clocks. Just instinct, discipline, and the threat of punishment if something goes wrong. The structure of a medieval castle is not random. Every stone, every room, every narrow staircase serves a purpose, and the people inside move through it in patterns as fixed as the walls themselves. At the top, literally and figuratively, are the lord and lady. Their chambers occupy the safest, most comfortable part of the castle, often in the keep or main tower. High ceilings, tapestries on the walls, a fireplace large enough to actually warm the room, windows with wooden shutters, sometimes even glazed with expensive glass. Their beds are draped with curtains, not just for warmth, but for privacy, though privacy, as we'll see, is a relative term. Below them, both in status and in physical space, live the knights, squires, and higher-ranking household officials. The steward, the chamberlain, the marshal. These are men of authority. They don't scrub floors or haul water, but they don't lounge in luxury either. Their rooms are small, functional. A bed, a chest for belongings, maybe a small table. Comfort is measured not in softness, but in having a door you can close. And then there's everyone else. The cooks, the scullions, the laundresses, the stable hands, the porters, the messengers, the carpenters, the blacksmiths when they're on castle grounds. Some have designated sleeping quarters. Others sleep wherever there's space. Above the kitchens, where the rising heat makes winter almost bearable. In corners of the great hall after the fires die down. In the stables, curled against the flank of a patient horse. You learn quickly that a warm spot is worth more than a soft one. The castle is never truly private. Doors are rare. Curtains and partitions offer the illusion of separation, but sound travels. So does smell. You know when the kitchen is preparing fish. You know when someone in the servants' quarters is sick. You know when the Lord is angry because his voice carries through stone like a bell. You accept it. Privacy is for the rich, and even they don't get much. Let's talk about the kitchens. If the great hall is the heart of the castle, the kitchens are the furnace. They're loud, hot, smoky, and perpetually chaotic, and they never, ever stop. The head cook is a man of considerable authority. In a large castle, he might oversee a staff of 20 or more. He plans menus, manages supplies, and makes sure that every meal from the Lord's table to the servants' corner is prepared, cooked, and served on time. It's not culinary artistry. It's logistics. And if he's good at it, he's worth his weight in silver. Beneath him are the undercooks, the scullions, the spit-turners, and the endless parade of young boys and girls who chop, carry, and clean. The main hearth is massive. In some castles, it's large enough to walk inside. Multiple spits turn at once, each loaded with meat, poultry, or game. The spit-turners, often children, sit or stand for hours, rotating the iron rods to ensure even cooking. It's hot, tedious, and dangerous. A moment's inattention, and you're burned. A slip of the hand and the entire roast hits the floor. That's a beating, maybe worse. Pots bubble over open flames, filled with pottage, stew, or stock. The smell is overwhelming. Roasting meat, simmering onions, burning fat, wood smoke, sweat, and the faint rot of vegetables past their prime. You stop noticing after a while. Or you pretend to. Bread is baked in separate ovens, sometimes in a different building, entirely to reduce fire risk. Loaves emerge by the dozen, some white and fine for the Lord's table, others dark and coarse for the servants. The hierarchy of bread is absolute. What you eat tells everyone exactly where you stand. Preparing a feast is controlled chaos. Picture this. A visiting noble is arriving tomorrow with an entourage of 30. The head cook receives the news, calculates the supplies, and begins shouting orders. Chickens are slaughtered, plucked, and gutted. Fish are scaled. Vegetables are sorted. Spices, precious and carefully rationed, are measured out. Pies are assembled. Sauces are thickened. And through it all, the kitchen staff moves in a dance they've rehearsed 1,000 times. The scullions scrub, the undercooks chop, the spit-turners turn, and the head cook tastes, adjusts, and barks corrections. When the meal is finally ready, it's carried through the castle in a procession. Squires and pages take the finer dishes. Servants take the rest. The great hall fills with the scent of roasted meat and fresh bread. The Lord and his guests take their seats. Musicians play. Wine is poured. And in the kitchen, the staff collapses onto benches, too tired to eat, already thinking about tomorrow's meals. The laundry is another world entirely. It's back-breaking, cold, and utterly essential. The laundress, often an older woman with strong arms and a stronger will, oversees the washing, drying, and mending of every piece of fabric in the castle. Linens, tunics, undergarments, tablecloths, bed curtains, everything. In a large household, that's hundreds of items every week. Water is hauled from wells or nearby streams. In winter, it's frigid. In summer, it's stagnant. Either way, it has to be heated in massive cauldrons over open fires. Lye soap, harsh and caustic, is mixed in. The laundress and her assistants scrub each item by hand, using wooden paddles or their own raw knuckles. Stains are treated with urine, which, due to its ammonia content, actually works. No one talks about it. Everyone knows. Once washed, the linens are wrung out, a process that requires two people twisting in opposite directions until their arms shake. Then they're laid out to dry, either on bushes, racks, or spread across the grass if the weather allows. In winter, they're hung near the kitchens, where the heat helps. But damp linen in a smoky room smells about how you'd expect. The laundress doesn't complain. Complaining changes nothing. Mending happens by candlelight. Torn tunics are patched. Sheets are restitched. Holes are darned. It's slow, precise work that requires good eyes and steady hands. Young girls are taught to sew as soon as they can hold a needle. By the time they're 20, their fingers are scarred and their eyesight is failing. But the work continues. Fabric is expensive. Nothing is wasted. The stables are a different kind of essential. Horses are the lifeblood of the medieval world. They carry knights into battle, pull carts loaded with supplies, and serve as symbols of status and wealth. A well-bred destrier, the massive war horse favored by knights, can cost as much as a small manor. Losing one is catastrophic. So the care of horses is taken very, very seriously. The marshal oversees the stables, but the day-to-day work falls to grooms. They rise before dawn to muck out stalls, a task that's exactly as unpleasant as it sounds. Wet straw, manure, and the occasional dead rat are shoveled into carts and hauled away. Fresh straw is spread. Water troughs are filled. Feed is distributed, carefully measured. Too much and the horse founders. Too little and it weakens. Grooming is an art. Each horse is brushed, its coat checked for sores or parasites. Hooves are picked clean and inspected for cracks or stones. Tack, saddles, bridles, bits is cleaned and oiled. Leather cracks in the cold and rots in the damp. A broken strap during a charge can mean death. So every piece is checked, repaired, and checked again. When a knight rides out, the groom saddles the horse, adjusts the stirrups, and hands over the reins. When the knight returns, the groom takes the horse, walks it until it cools, and tends any injuries. If the horse is lame, the groom is blamed. If the horse is healthy, the knight takes the credit. That's how it works. Then there are the blacksmiths, carpenters, and other craftsmen who keep the castle's infrastructure intact. The blacksmith works in the forge, a separate building thick with smoke and the ring of hammer on anvil. He shoes horses, repairs armor, crafts tools, and makes nails by the hundred. His apprentices work the bellows, keeping the fire hot enough to soften iron. It's brutal work. Burns are common. Hearing loss is inevitable from the constant clanging. But the blacksmith is respected. His skill is irreplaceable. Carpenters mend doors, repair furniture, and build scaffolding for repairs. Masons patch crumbling walls. Thatchers replace sections of roof damaged by wind or fire. These men move through the castle like ghosts, noticed only when something breaks. They eat in their own corner of the hall, sleep in shared quarters, and receive wages in coin or goods. They're not servants in the traditional sense, but they're not free either. They work because the castle needs them, and the castle always needs them. Now, let's talk about the people who serve the lord and lady directly. These are the chamberlains, pages, ladies-in-waiting, and personal attendants. Their work is less about physical labor and more about presence. They dress the lord, arrange his schedule, carry messages, and ensure his comfort. It's a position of privilege, relatively speaking. You're close to power. You eat better. You sleep in warmer rooms, but you're also never off duty. The Lord's needs come first, second, and third. Your own needs, if they're considered at all, come last. Pages are young boys, often sons of lesser nobles, sent to serve in a great household. They learn manners, literacy, and the basics of courtly life. They fetch, carry, and stand silent during meals, ready to refill a cup or fetch a forgotten item. It's training for future roles as squires and eventually knights, but it's also tedious and lonely. A boy of 8, torn from his family and placed in a strange castle, learns quickly to hide his tears. Ladies in waiting serve the lady of the castle. They help her dress, arrange her hair, and accompany her throughout the day. They embroider, read aloud, and provide companionship. It sounds gentle. It's not. The lady's moods dictate everything. A careless word, a poorly tied lace, and you're dismissed. Or worse, publicly humiliated. You learn to read her face, to anticipate her needs, and to stay just visible enough to be useful, but invisible enough not to irritate. Then there are the servants no one talks about, but everyone depends on. The gong farmers, who clear the cesspits and garderobes. The rat catchers, who wage a losing war against the castle's thriving rodent population. The night soil collectors, who haul waste under cover of darkness. These jobs are grim, low status, and absolutely necessary. Without them, the castle becomes uninhabitable. And so they work, unseen and unacknowledged, kept at arm's length by a society that needs them, but refuses to honor them. Food in a medieval castle is a study in contrasts. What you eat depends entirely on who you are. The Lord's table groans with roasted meats, pies filled with spiced game, fresh bread, imported fruits, and wine from distant vineyards. The servants eat pottage, a thick stew of grains, beans, and whatever vegetables are available. Sometimes there's a bit of salt pork. More often, there's not. Bread is dark, coarse, and filling. Ale is weak but safer than water. No one complains. Complaining doesn't fill your belly. Meals are communal, eaten in shifts. The Lord and his guests dine in the great hall, seated at long tables. Servants eat in the kitchens or in corners of the hall after the nobles have finished. You eat quickly, standing or sitting on benches. There's no lingering, no conversation. Just fuel, and then back to work. Feast days are different. When the Lord celebrates, everyone benefits. The kitchens prepare vast quantities of food, and the leftovers are distributed. It's a gesture of generosity, but also of control. The Lord gives, and you're reminded that you depend on his goodwill. You accept your portion, thank him, and move on. The food tastes the same as any other day, but for a few hours, there's enough of it. And that, in a medieval castle, is as close to abundance as most people will ever get. Sleep, when it comes, is brief and rarely comfortable. Servants don't have bedrooms. They have sleeping spaces, a corner of the hall, a spot above the kitchens, a pile of straw in the stables. You lie down fully clothed, sometimes wrapped in a cloak, sometimes not. Vermin are constant companions. Lice, fleas, bedbugs. You scratch without thinking. You wake to bells, shouts, or the prod of a foot. There's no gentle morning, just the abrupt return to awareness and the knowledge that the day has already begun without you. For those who live and work inside the castle, time is not measured in hours, but in tasks. The bread is baked. The horses are fed. The hall is swept. The laundry is hung. The fire is tended. One task flows into the next, and the days blur together. Winter is marked by cold and short daylight. Summer by heat and long hours. Spring and autumn are brief, almost unnoticed in the relentless rhythm of work. And yet, despite the hardship, there is community. The cook's apprentice who shares his bread. The laundress who teaches a young girl to mend. The groom who lets a page sleep in the stables when he's been punished. These small kindnesses are never recorded. They leave no mark in history, but they matter. They're what makes survival possible. In a world that treats you as replaceable, these moments remind you that you're human, that you're seen, that someone somewhere cares if you make it through the day. Religion is woven through every aspect of castle life, not as comfort, but as structure. Bells ring for prayers, and everyone stops. The Lord attends Mass in the chapel. Servants pray in hurried whispers between tasks. Saints are invoked for protection, for healing, for patience. The church teaches that suffering is holy, that obedience brings reward in the next life. It's a message the servants hear often. Whether they believe it is another question. Feast days bring brief respite. On holy days, work is lightened, not stopped but eased. There might be music, dancing in the courtyard, a storyteller by the fire. The servants participate, laughing and clapping, before returning to their corners. These moments are rare enough to be remembered. The rest of the year blends into a haze of labor and exhaustion. Illness is a constant threat. In the close quarters of the castle, disease spreads quickly. A cough becomes an epidemic. A fever can decimate the servants' quarters in a week. There are no doctors for the common staff. Folk remedies are tried, herbs are boiled, prayers are offered. Sometimes people recover. Often they don't. Bodies are removed quietly, buried in unmarked graves outside the castle walls. New servants are brought in to fill the gaps. Life continues. Injury is just as common. Burns from the kitchen, kicks from horses, falls from ladders. A broken bone means months of reduced work, often without pay. If you're lucky, the castle keeps you on out of charity. If not, you're sent home to your village, where your family struggles to feed another mouth. You learn to be careful. You learn to push through pain. You learn that your body is a tool, and tools that break are discarded. And yet people endure. They wake each day, perform their tasks, and lie down each night. They find moments of joy in small things. A warm meal, a joke shared in the kitchens, a song hummed while scrubbing floors. These are the textures of a servant's life in a medieval castle. Not grand or glorious, but real. Textured with sweat, smoke, and the stubborn persistence of people who refuse to be broken by the weight of stone walls and social hierarchies. The lord and lady move through the castle like distant suns. You see them, but you don't speak to them. You bow when they pass. You step aside. You keep your eyes down. They exist in a different world, one of decisions and diplomacy, feasts and finery. You exist to make that world possible. And if you do your job well, they never notice you at all. This is life inside a medieval castle. Not the version told in songs or painted in manuscripts, but the lived reality of hundreds of people whose names are lost, but whose work built the world we remember. And as you drift towards sleep tonight, perhaps you can hear them. The scrape of a broom on stone, the clatter of pots in the kitchen, the soft murmur of voices in the dark. They're still there, in a way, still working. Still enduring, still reminding us that history is made not just by kings and knights, but by the countless invisible hands that kept the castle standing. The hierarchy among servants is as rigid as the hierarchy between nobles and commoners. Everyone has a place, and stepping outside that place invites trouble. At the top of the servant structure sits the steward, the lord's right hand in managing the estate. He's not nobility, but he wields considerable power. He oversees finances, settles disputes, manages supplies, and ensures the castle runs smoothly. He eats at a separate table, sleeps in his own chamber, and speaks with authority that even knights respect. To the servants below him, he's almost as distant as the Lord himself. Below the steward comes the chamberlain, who manages the Lord's personal chambers and private affairs. He controls who enters the Lord's presence, manages his wardrobe, and safeguards his valuables. Trust is essential. A chamberlain caught stealing might lose more than his position. He might lose his hand or his life. The marshal oversees the stables, the horses, and often the castle's military readiness. In peacetime, he's a manager. In war, he becomes crucial. He ensures every horse is battle-ready, every piece of tack is sound, and every groom knows his business. His authority extends to anyone who handles the horses, from the highest-ranking squire to the lowest stable boy. Then there's the butler, who controls the buttery and the wine cellar. Wine is wealth. A good vintage from Bordeaux or the Rhine can cost a fortune, and the butler guards it jealously. He manages inventory, serves at the Lord's table, and ensures that no servant sneaks a cup without permission. The penalty for theft is severe. Wine isn't just drink. It's a status, currency, and power. The pantler manages the pantry and oversees bread distribution. In a castle where hundreds of loaves are baked daily, this is no small task. He ensures the finest white bread reaches the high table. The common brown bread goes to the knights and squires, and the coarsest dark bread feeds the servants. He knows exactly how much flour remains, how many sacks of grain are in storage, and when supplies need replenishing. Below these officials, the hierarchy fractures into specializations. The head cook rules the kitchens with absolute authority. His word is law. A scullion who talks back might find himself locked in the root cellar for a day. An undercook who ruins a sauce might be demoted to spit-turning. The head cook answers only to the steward and, occasionally, the lady of the castle when she takes interest in a particular meal. In the kitchens, the undercooks assist with preparation and cooking. They're skilled workers who've spent years learning their craft. They know how to join a pig, prepare a fish, season a stew, and rescue a sauce on the verge of breaking. They work long hours over hot fires, and their faces bear the scars of burns and cuts. But they eat better than most servants, sampling dishes as they cook and claiming the occasional choice morsel. The scullions are at the bottom of the kitchen hierarchy. They scrub pots, haul water, peel vegetables, and perform every dirty, tedious task the undercooks don't want to do. Most are young, some as young as 7 or 8. They work from before dawn until well after dark, their hands raw from lye soap and cold water. Many dream of becoming undercooks one day. Few will, but they work anyway, because the alternative is worse. Spit-turners occupy a strange middle ground. The work is simple but critical. You sit or stand beside the great hearth, turning a heavy iron spit loaded with meat. You must turn it steadily, neither too fast nor too slow, ensuring even cooking. Stop for too long and one side burns. Turn too quickly and the meat doesn't cook through. It's mind-numbing work that requires just enough attention to keep you from daydreaming. Many spit-turners are children, valued for their small size and ability to sit close to the fire without complaint. Their faces are perpetually red from the heat. Their hands develop thick calluses on the palms where the iron rod rests. The laundry staff, almost exclusively women, work in their own domain. The head laundress manages supplies, assigns tasks, and inspects finished work. She's often middle-aged or older, her hands permanently reddened and roughened from years of washing. She knows every stain, every fabric, and every trick for getting linens clean. Younger women and girls work under her direction, learning the craft through repetition and correction. Washing day follows a brutal routine. Water is hauled from wells or streams, heated in massive cauldrons, and mixed with lye soap. The laundresses scrub each item against wooden boards, their knuckles bleeding by midday. White linens are bleached in sunlight, laid out on grass or bushes, and turned regularly. Colored fabrics are treated more gently to preserve their dyes. Everything is checked for tears, holes, or worn spots. Mending happens immediately. A small hole today becomes a gaping tear tomorrow. In winter, laundry is a nightmare. Water freezes in buckets. Wet linens stiffen in the cold before they can dry. The laundresses work near the kitchens, where steam and smoke mingle with the smell of damp wool. Their fingers crack and bleed. Their backs ache from bending over washtubs. But the work never stops. The Lord needs fresh linens. The knights need clean tunics. The servants need, well, the servants make do. The stables employ their own hierarchy. The head groom oversees all horse-related activities. He's usually a man of experience, someone who's worked with horses his entire life. He can diagnose lameness at a glance, sense a horse's mood by the position of its ears, and calm a panicked animal with voice alone. His knowledge makes him valuable, and he knows it. Under him work the regular grooms, each responsible for several horses. They know their charges intimately, every quirk and preference. They can tell when a horse is off its feed, when it needs shoeing, when it's ready to work, and when it needs rest. They sleep near the stables, waking at the slightest sound of distress. A sick horse requires immediate attention, and the grooms provide it, staying up all night if necessary. Stable boys, the lowest rank, muck out stalls, haul feed and water, and perform the countless small tasks that keep the operation running. They're usually young, often sons of local peasants who've been sent to work in the castle. Some will become grooms. Others will leave after a few years, their backs permanently bent from shoveling manure. The castle also employs specialists whose work is crucial but irregular. The barber surgeon tends to medical needs, though his methods are crude by any standard. He bleeds patients, sets broken bones, pulls teeth, and treats wounds. His success rate is mixed. Some recover. Many don't. He's called when someone is seriously ill or injured, and his arrival is greeted with a mixture of hope and dread. The chaplain serves the castle's spiritual needs. He conducts daily mass, hears confessions, and provides counsel. He's educated, literate, and often comes from a minor noble family. He lives comfortably, dines well, and occupies a position of respect. To the servants, he's a figure of authority tempered by the expectation of mercy. Some chaplains are kind, visiting the sick and comforting the dying. Others are distant, more concerned with pleasing the Lord than ministering to the masses. There are also the craftsmen who work on castle grounds, but aren't strictly servants. The blacksmith, as mentioned, is essential. His forge produces everything from nails to weapons. He's paid for his work, sometimes in coin, sometimes in goods. His relationship with the Lord is more transactional than servile. He provides a service. The Lord provides compensation and protection. It's a business arrangement, though one heavily weighted in the Lord's favor. Carpenters, masons, and thatchers arrive when needed for repairs or construction. They might stay for weeks or months, working on a damaged wall, a new building, or reinforcing the gate. They live in temporary quarters, eat with the servants, and leave when the work is done. Some return regularly. Others are never seen again. Now, let's talk about the daily routines in greater detail, because the rhythm of castle life is built on repetition. Every day follows roughly the same pattern, with variations for seasons, feast days, and the Lord's whims. The day begins in darkness. In summer, that might be around 4 in the morning. In winter, closer to 6. The first to wake are the bakers and their apprentices. Ovens need time to heat, and bread takes hours to rise and bake. The bakers work by candlelight, mixing flour, water, salt, and yeast into massive batches of dough. The apprentices knead until their arms shake, then shape loaves and set them aside to rise. While the bread rises, the kitchen staff arrives. Fires are rekindled in the great hearth. Water is set to boil. The head cook reviews the day's menu, which depends on what's available and what the Lord has requested. A typical day might include pottage for breakfast, roasted meat and bread for midday meal, and a lighter supper of cheese, bread, and ale. But if guests are expected, everything changes. The scullions begin their work, hauling water from wells, washing pots from the previous night, and preparing vegetables. Onions are peeled, leeks are cleaned, turnips are scrubbed. Everything must be ready before the undercooks arrive and begin the actual cooking. The rhythm is established early. Scullions prepare, undercooks cook, and the head cook oversees tasting, adjusting, and correcting. In the great hall, servants sweep the floor, removing old rushes that have become fouled with spilled food, tracked mud, and worse. Fresh rushes are spread, sometimes mixed with herbs to provide a more pleasant scent. Benches and tables are wiped down. The high table, where the Lord sits, receives special attention. Its cloth must be spotless, its surface gleaming. The Lord and Lady wake later, usually around 7 or 8. They're attended by personal servants who help them dress, bring water for washing, and arrange their hair. The lady's wardrobe is elaborate, requiring assistants to put on multiple layers of clothing. The Lord's dress is simpler, but no less important. Appearance matters. A lord must look the part. After dressing, the household attends morning mass in the castle chapel. This is not optional. Everyone from the lord to the lowest servant is expected to participate. The chaplain conducts the service in Latin, which most servants don't understand. They stand, kneel, and mutter responses they've memorized. It's ritual, routine, and required. Faith is assumed. Devotion is performed. Breakfast follows Mass, though it's a light meal. Bread, cheese, perhaps some cold meat left from yesterday, ale to drink. The lord and lady eat in their chambers or the great hall, depending on their mood. Servants eat in the kitchens, standing or sitting on benches, consuming their portions quickly before returning to work. The morning is the busiest time. The steward meets with the lord to discuss estate business. Rents collected, disputes to settle, supplies to order. The chamberlain organizes the day's schedule. The marshal inspects the stables. The head cook begins preparing the midday meal, the largest and most important of the day. In the great hall, preparations begin early. Tables are set, bread is sliced. Wine and ale are brought from the cellars. Servants rehearse their roles, knowing that any mistake during the meal will be noticed and punished. Pages stand ready to serve the high table. Squires prepare to carve meat. Everyone knows their place. The midday meal is a performance. The lord and lady enter with ceremony. Guests, if any, are seated according to rank. Grace is said. Then the food arrives in a carefully choreographed procession. First the bread and ale, then the main dishes, carried high and presented with flourish. Roasted meats, pies, fish, stews, all arranged to impress. The lord and his guests eat with their fingers, using knives to cut meat and bread as plates. Table manners are important. You don't reach across someone. You don't take the best portion for yourself. You don't wipe your hands on the tablecloth, though everyone does. Servants hover nearby, ready to refill cups, remove empty platters, and bring the next course. Musicians might play during the meal, providing entertainment. A minstrel sings of battles and romance. A boy plays a lute. The atmosphere is festive, at least at the high table. Below, at the lower tables where knights and squires sit, the mood is more relaxed. Conversations flow. Ale flows faster. By the end of the meal, some are quite drunk. Servants don't eat during the meal. They wait, standing for hours, until the lord and his guests have finished. Only then do they retreat to the kitchens to claim their own portions. By this time, the food is cold, the bread hard, and the best bits taken. But it's food, and they're grateful. Afternoons vary depending on the season and the lord's activities. In summer, there might be hunting. The lord and his knights ride out with hawks and hounds. Servants prepare the horses, pack supplies, and clean up after the party returns with game. In winter, indoor activities dominate. The lord meets with advisors. The lady supervises needlework. Servants continue their endless tasks. This is also when repairs happen. A broken shutter is fixed. A leaky roof is patched. A wobbly bench is reinforced. The castle is always falling apart in small ways, and constant maintenance keeps it habitable. Craftsmen work throughout the afternoon, their hammering and sawing providing a constant background noise. The laundresses work through the afternoon, hanging wet linens to dry or taking down what's already dried. Mending continues by whatever light is available. In summer, they work outside. In winter, they huddle near the kitchen fires, their needles flying as they race against darkness. Grooms exercise horses that haven't been ridden. They walk them around the courtyard, checking for lameness or illness. Tack is repaired, oiled, and hung to dry. The stables are swept again. Fresh bedding is added. The work is never truly done, just paused. The evening meal, supper, is lighter than midday. Bread, cheese, perhaps some dried fruit, ale or watered wine. It's eaten earlier in winter when darkness falls quickly, later in summer when daylight lingers. The atmosphere is more relaxed. The lord might dine in his chambers. The great hall becomes more communal, with knights, servants, and craftsmen sharing space. After supper, the evening belongs to rest and recreation, though for servants, rest is relative. Some continue working by candlelight. Others gather in the kitchens or servants' quarters, sharing stories and gossip. A servant might play a simple instrument, a pipe or drum. Others sing. These moments of community are precious, stolen from the edges of exhaustion. The lord and lady might entertain guests in the great hall. Musicians perform. A storyteller recites tales of heroes and saints. The fire burns high, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Ale and wine flow freely. Laughter echoes. For a few hours, the castle feels warm, alive, almost joyful. But not for the servants. While the nobles relax, servants prepare for the next day. Bread dough is mixed and set to rise overnight. Fires are banked. Chambers are tidied. Animals are checked one last time. The work continues until bodies can no longer move. Then everyone collapses into whatever sleeping space they've claimed. Sleep comes hard and fast. There are no long, peaceful nights. Just a few hours of unconsciousness before the cycle begins again. Some servants dream of better lives. Others don't dream at all. They simply stop, like candles blown out, and wait for morning to relight them. Let's talk about the specific roles in more detail, because each one has its own rhythms, challenges, and small dignities. The cook's life revolves around fire and timing. He wakes before everyone else and sleeps after most have retired. His domain is the kitchen, and within those walls, his word is law. He plans menus based on available supplies, the Lord's preferences, and the season. In autumn, there's game and fresh vegetables. In winter, preserved meats and root vegetables. Spring brings fresh herbs and young animals. Summer offers variety, but also heat that makes the kitchen nearly unbearable. A good cook is part chef, part manager, part politician. He must please the Lord while working within budget constraints. He must motivate his staff without breaking them. He must improvise when supplies run short or when unexpected guests arrive. His reputation rests on every meal, and a single disaster can ruin years of trust. The cook's tools are simple but essential. Iron pots and cauldrons, wooden spoons and paddles, knives of various sizes, and the great iron spits. He knows each tool intimately, its weight and balance, its strengths and limitations. A pot with a thin bottom burns easily. A dull knife is dangerous. A warped spit cooks unevenly. He maintains his tools obsessively because his work depends on them. Seasonings are his art. The wealthy demand spiced foods, not just for flavor, but as displays of wealth. Pepper from India, cinnamon from Ceylon, cloves from the Spice Islands all cost fortunes. The cook measures them carefully, creating flavor profiles that impress without bankrupting the estate. For servants' food, he uses local herbs. Parsley, sage, thyme, rosemary. Cheap, available, and surprisingly effective. The cook's relationship with the steward is critical. The steward controls the budget and supplies. If the cook wants expensive ingredients, he must justify the expense. If supplies run low, he must make do. The two negotiate constantly, a careful dance of needs and limitations. A wise cook cultivates this relationship, understanding that his success depends on the steward's cooperation. The laundress faces different challenges. Her work is physically brutal and never-ending. In a castle housing 100 people, the volume of dirty linens is staggering. Bed sheets, tablecloths, tunics, undergarments, towels, everything must be washed, dried, and mended. Her day begins by organizing her staff. Who hauls water, who tends the fires, who scrubs, who hangs, who mends. She assigns tasks based on skill and stamina. New girls get the simplest jobs. Experienced women handle delicate fabrics and difficult stains. Everyone works together because the volume demands it. The washing process is standardized through long practice. Heavily sold items are soaked overnight. In the morning, they're scrubbed with lye soap on wooden boards. Stains require special treatment. Blood is soaked in cold water, then scrubbed. Grease stains are treated with fuller's earth or chalk. Wine stains sometimes require salt or white wine. The laundress knows dozens of remedies, passed down through generations. Rinsing is crucial. Lye soap is harsh, and residue irritates skin. Items are rinsed multiple times in clean water, then wrung out by hand. Two women grip opposite ends and twist in opposite directions, water streaming onto the floor. It's exhausting work that leaves arms shaking and hands cramping. Drying depends on weather. Sunny days are ideal. Linens are spread on bushes or grass, turned regularly to ensure even drying. Rainy days force the use of indoor drying racks near the kitchens. The damp linens steam in the heat, filling the air with moisture and the smell of wet wool. It's unpleasant but necessary. Mending is the quiet work, done in the evenings by candlelight. The laundress and her assistants sit together, needles flashing as they repair tears, darn holes, and reinforce weak spots. Conversation flows softly. Gossip is shared, news is exchanged, advice is given. These evenings create bonds, friendships forged through shared labor. The groom's life centers on horses, creatures that require constant attention. A healthy horse needs feeding, watering, grooming, and exercise. A sick horse needs all that plus medication, special feed, and careful monitoring. The groom provides it all, developing deep knowledge of equine behavior and health. Morning begins with inspection. The groom walks through the stables, checking each horse. Are they alert? Eating? Standing normally? Any sign of lameness, colic, or injury requires immediate attention. A horse that's off its feed might be sick. A horse favoring a leg might have thrown a shoe or developed an abscess. The groom investigates, treats minor problems himself, and calls the marshal for serious issues. Feeding is carefully calibrated. Each horse receives a specific amount based on size, age, and workload. A destrier preparing for battle needs more than a palfrey used for riding. Hay is distributed first, then oats or barley. Water must be fresh and available at all times. The groom checks water troughs multiple times daily, cleaning them regularly to prevent algae or contamination. Grooming is both practical and meditative. The groom brushes each horse thoroughly, removing dirt and stimulating circulation. He picks hooves, checking for stones or thrush. He examines legs for swelling or heat that might indicate injury. He runs his hands over the body, feeling for lumps or sensitive spots. This daily inspection catches problems early, before they become serious. Tack maintenance is endless. Leather must be cleaned and oiled to prevent cracking. Metal bits and buckles must be polished and checked for wear. Saddles must be inspected for loose stitching or damaged trees. A broken girth during a charge can throw a knight. A rough bit can injure a horse's mouth. The groom checks everything obsessively. Exercise happens when horses aren't needed for riding. The groom leads them around the courtyard, observing their movement. He notes any stiffness or reluctance to move. In good weather, he might turn them into a paddock to run freely. Horses need movement to stay healthy, and the groom ensures they get it. The blacksmith's work is specialized and respected. He works in the forge, a separate building where fire and metal meet. His day revolves around heat, hammering, and precise measurements. Shoeing horses is his most common task. A horse's hooves grow constantly, and shoes wear down. Regular shoeing is essential. The process begins with removing old shoes. The blacksmith uses specialized tools to pry off the nails and lift the shoe. He then trims the hoof, shaping it for the new shoe. This requires skill. Trim too much, and the horse goes lame. Trim too little, and the shoe doesn't fit properly. New shoes are forged from iron bars. The blacksmith heats the metal in the forge until it glows red, then hammers it on the anvil, shaping it to fit the hoof. The rhythmic clanging of hammer on metal is the forge's signature sound. When the shoe is shaped, it's cooled in water, creating a hiss of steam. Fitting the shoe requires precision. The blacksmith holds the hot shoe against the hoof briefly, burning a mark that shows high spots. He returns the anvil, adjusts the shoe, and tries again. This process repeats until the fit is perfect. Then the shoe is nailed on, each nail driven through the shoe and into the hoof wall, avoiding the sensitive inner structures. A poorly placed nail can lame a horse permanently. Beyond shoeing, the blacksmith repairs tools, crafts new ones, and maintains weapons and armor. He straightens bent swords, replaces damaged links in chainmail, and forges everything from hinges to nails. His skills make him valuable, and he knows it. Unlike servants, he negotiates his compensation and can refuse work if the terms aren't acceptable. The chaplain's role is both spiritual and social. He conducts daily mass, hears confessions, and provides counsel. But he's also a political figure, representing the church's interests within the castle. His relationship with the Lord is complex. He must maintain religious authority while acknowledging secular power. His day begins with preparing for morning mass. He dresses in his vestments, arranges the altar, and reviews the day's readings. The service is conducted in Latin, following rituals unchanged for centuries. The congregation doesn't need to understand the words. The ritual itself carries meaning. After Mass, the chaplain makes himself available for confessions. Servants arrive with sins to confess, seeking absolution. Most sins are minor: anger, lying, laziness, lustful thoughts. The chaplain listens, assigns penances, and offers forgiveness in God's name. More serious sins require more serious responses, though the chaplain's discretion is wide. The chaplain also ministers to the sick and dying. When someone falls ill, he's called to administer last rites, ensuring the soul departs in a state of grace. These visits are somber. The chaplain prays, anoints with oil, and offers whatever comfort he can. Death is common enough that these visits become routine, though each one carries weight. Education sometimes falls to the chaplain. He might teach reading and writing to noble children or promising servants. Literacy is rare and valuable, mostly confined to clergy and nobility. The chaplain opens this door for a select few, knowing that education can change destinies. The messenger's life is dangerous and uncertain. Castles communicate through written messages, and someone must carry them. The messenger rides from castle to castle, sometimes through friendly territory, sometimes through hostile lands. Bandits, wild animals, and simple accidents make every journey risky. Speed is essential. Messages often contain time-sensitive information: troop movements, political alliances, urgent requests. The messenger rides hard, changing horses at way stations when possible, sleeping in snatches, eating in the saddle. He carries letters sealed with wax, marked with the sender's signet ring. Breaking the seal is forbidden and punishable by death. The messenger must be trustworthy. He carries secrets that could change kingdoms. A message intercepted or sold could alter the course of wars. Lords choose messengers carefully, often selecting young men from loyal families. The position offers adventure and relatively good pay, but the mortality rate is high. Navigation is by landmarks and memory. There are no maps for the common man. The messenger learns routes through repetition, noting rivers, hills, and settlements. He knows which lords are friendly and which are hostile. He knows where to find shelter and where to avoid. This knowledge keeps him alive. Weather affects everything. Rain turns roads to mud, slowing progress. Snow makes travel nearly impossible. Summer heat exhausts horses. The messenger adjusts his pace and route accordingly, always balancing speed against safety. Now let's talk about the castle's children, because they're everywhere, often overlooked, but essential to understanding castle life. Noble children live privileged but structured lives. Boys are trained for knighthood or administration. Girls for marriage and household management. Their education begins early. Boys learn riding, swordsmanship, and courtly manners. Girls learn needlework, music, and the complex social rules governing noble behavior. Page boys, usually between 7 and 14, serve as the first step toward knighthood. They're sent from their families to serve in another noble's household, learning service and obedience. Their tasks include carrying messages, serving at table, and assisting knights with armor and weapons. It's meant to teach humility and discipline, though it often just teaches loneliness. The pages sleep in dormitories, share meals in the Great Hall, and receive instruction in combat, literacy, and religion. Masters train them in swordsmanship using wooden weapons. Chaplains teach them to read and write. Older knights instruct them in honor and duty. It's intensive training designed to produce capable knights and loyal vassals. Servant children have no such structure. They begin working as soon as they're able, usually around age 7 or 8. A cook's child might start by fetching water and peeling vegetables. A groom's son learns to muck stalls and groom horses. A laundress's daughter learns to wash and mend. Skills are passed down through families, creating dynasties of servants. Play happens in stolen moments. Children chase each other through corridors. They play with simple toys, dolls made from cloth scraps, balls made from rags. They make up games, tell stories, and create their own small world within the castle's larger one. Education is informal and practical. There's no schooling for servant children. They learn by watching and doing. A boy learns to stack firewood by helping his father. A girl learns to knead bread by working beside her mother. Reading and writing remain mysteries, accessible only to the fortunate few. Childhood ends abruptly. By 12 or 13, children are considered young adults. They take on full work responsibilities, and their childhood games are set aside. For girls, marriage might come as early as 14. For boys, apprenticeships or continued service in the castle. The transition is unmarked by ceremony, just a gradual increase in expectations. Let's talk about feast days and festivals, because these break the monotony and reveal the castle at its most vibrant. Christmas is the grandest celebration. Preparations begin weeks in advance. The kitchens work overtime, preparing special dishes. Boar's head, roasted peacock served in its feathers, elaborate pies filled with spiced meats and fruits. The great hall is decorated with evergreen boughs, holly, and ivy. A massive Yule log is dragged in and lit with great ceremony. The feast itself lasts for hours. Course after course arrives, each more elaborate than the last. Musicians play continuously. Minstrels sing carols. Acrobats and jugglers entertain. The Lord sits at the high table, presiding over this celebration with calculated generosity. Servants eat the leftovers, but on Christmas, the leftovers are plentiful. After the feast, the castle relaxes into revelry. There's dancing in the great hall, games in the courtyard, drinking everywhere. Social hierarchies loosen slightly. A servant might share a cup with a squire. A page might join the dancing. It's not equality, just a brief suspension of the usual rules. Easter brings its own rituals. The chaplain conducts special services throughout Holy Week. On Good Friday, the castle fasts. Meat is forbidden, replaced by fish and vegetables. The mood is somber, penitent. On Easter Sunday, the fast breaks with celebration. A feast, though smaller than Christmas, marks Christ's resurrection. Saints' days punctuate the year, each bringing its own traditions. On St. Martin's Day in November, geese are slaughtered and roasted. On St. John's Eve in June, bonfires are lit and jumped over for luck. These celebrations connect the castle to the rhythms of the agricultural year and the cycles of the church calendar. Weddings transform the castle into a stage for display. When the Lord's daughter marries or his son takes a bride, the castle hosts elaborate celebrations lasting days. Guests arrive from across the region. Temporary shelters are erected in the courtyard. The kitchens work around the clock. The wedding feast is a statement of wealth and power. Dishes are designed to impress. A swan served in its feathers, a deer gilded with gold leaf, subtleties, elaborate sugar sculptures depicting scenes from mythology or religion. The cost is staggering, but the investment in prestige is considered worthwhile. Dancing follows the feast. Musicians play viols, lutes, and drums. Nobles dance elaborate patterns while servants watch from the edges. Later, when inhibitions loosen, everyone dances. The great hall becomes a swirl of bodies, laughter echoing off stone walls. Tournaments, when held nearby, bring excitement and chaos. Knights arrive with their entourages. The castle accommodates them, straining resources. The stables overflow with horses. The great hall becomes a dormitory, with pallets laid out shoulder to shoulder. The kitchens struggle to feed everyone. The tournament itself is spectacle. Jousting, melee combat, displays of horsemanship. The castle's inhabitants watch from whatever vantage points they can find. Walls, towers, windows, anywhere with a view. The clash of lance on shield, the thunder of hooves, the roar of the crowd create an atmosphere of barely controlled violence. After the tournament, the celebration continues. The victorious knights are feted. The injured are tended. The dead, if any, are mourned. Servants clean up the aftermath, collecting broken lances, repairing damaged field equipment, and restoring order. Now let's discuss the darker aspects of castle life, because not everything is feasts and festivals. Punishment is swift and often brutal. A servant caught stealing might lose a hand. A woman accused of infidelity might be publicly shamed. A man who strikes a superior could be whipped or imprisoned. Justice is arbitrary, based more on the Lord's mood than any consistent legal code. The dungeon, when it exists, is a place of horror. Dark, damp, and cold, it holds prisoners awaiting judgment or serving sentences. Some are political prisoners, held for ransom or leverage. Others are criminals awaiting execution or punishment. Conditions are appalling. Prisoners receive minimal food and water. Disease is rampant. Many die before their trials. Torture happens, though less frequently than popular imagination suggests. It's reserved for serious crimes or when information must be extracted. Methods are brutal. Racking, thumbscrews, hot irons. The chaplain is sometimes called to witness, ensuring the confession is valid in the eyes of the church. Execution is public and meant to deter. Hanging is common for thieves, beheading for nobles, burning for heretics. The entire castle watches, from the lord to the lowest servant. Its entertainment and education, a reminder of the consequences of transgression. Disease sweeps through castles regularly. The close quarters and poor sanitation create ideal conditions for contagion. A servant with a cough becomes a dozen servants with coughs. Dysentery spreads through contaminated water. Fevers burn through the quarters, leaving bodies in their wake. Plague, when it comes, is catastrophic. The Black Death arrives in the mid-14th century, killing indiscriminately. Lords and servants die together, their bodies piled in common graves. Some castles lose half their inhabitants. Survivors are traumatized, the social order disrupted. But life continues because it must. Fire is the castle's greatest fear. Stone walls don't burn, but everything inside does. Wooden furniture, tapestries, rushes on the floor, thatched roofs of outbuildings. A single dropped candle can become an inferno. Servants are trained to fight fires, forming bucket brigades from wells to flames. Success is uncertain. Many fires burn until they exhaust their fuel. Now let's talk about the changing of seasons and how they affect castle life. Winter is harsh. Daylight is brief. Darkness long. The castle hunkers down, conserving resources. Windows are shuttered against wind. Fires burn constantly, consuming vast quantities of wood. The cold seeps through stone walls, making even the great hall uncomfortable. Food becomes monotonous. Fresh vegetables are gone, replaced by stored root vegetables and preserved meats. Cabbage, turnips, onions, salted pork, dried fish. The same ingredients appear in endless variations. Servants dream of spring and fresh food. Illness increases. The cold weakens bodies already stressed by hard labor and poor nutrition. Coughs become pneumonia. Chills become fevers. The chaplain conducts more funerals in winter than any other season. But winter also brings rest. Agricultural work stops. Outdoor construction halts. The pace of life slows slightly. Servants have more time for mending, storytelling, and simply sitting by the fire. It's not leisure, exactly, but it's closer than summer's frantic pace. Spring arrives slowly. First, the days lengthen. Then the ice melts. Finally, green shoots appear. The castle stirs like a creature waking from hibernation. Windows are opened. Fresh air sweeps through halls. Linens are washed and hung to dry in the sun. Food improves. Early vegetables appear, greens and herbs that add flavor and vitamins. Chickens begin laying more eggs. Young animals are born, providing fresh meat. The diet diversifies and health improves. Work intensifies. Fields must be plowed and planted. Buildings damaged by winter storms require repair. The castle prepares for summer's activity, ensuring everything is ready for the Lord's travels, guests, and whatever campaigns might be planned. Summer is abundance and exhaustion. Food is plentiful. The gardens produce vegetables. Orchards yield fruit. Hunts bring fresh game. The kitchens serve varied, flavorful meals. Even servants eat better, enjoying the overflow from the Lord's table. But summer is also hot. The kitchens become unbearable, the great hearth radiating heat that makes the air shimmer. Servants work stripped to their undergarments, sweat streaming. Water must be constantly available to prevent collapse. Longer days mean longer work. Servants rise with the sun and work until it sets. There's too much to do and never enough time. Fields, gardens, repairs, preparations for winter. Everything must be done while the weather permits. Autumn brings harvest, the year's critical moment. Everything depends on a successful harvest. The castle's survival through winter, the Lord's wealth, the servants' rations. Everyone works the harvest, from the Lord's lady overseeing in the fields to the smallest child gathering gleanings. The kitchens preserve food frantically. Fruits are dried or made into preserves. Vegetables are pickled. Meat is salted or smoked. Every technique known is employed to store food for the months ahead. After harvest comes slaughter. Animals that can't be fed through winter are killed. The meat is preserved. The hides tanned. The bones boiled for stock. Nothing is wasted. Waste means starvation. And then, as autumn fades, winter approaches again. The cycle continues, endless and exhausting. But the castle endures, held together by the labor of people whose names are forgotten, but whose work made history possible. As we near the end of this journey through castle life, it's worth reflecting on what it all meant. These weren't just buildings. They were communities, complex ecosystems of people living, working, and surviving together. The Lord depended on the servants as much as they depended on him. Without cooks, there was no food. Without grooms, no horses. Without laundresses, no clean linens. The servants lived hard lives, but they weren't without dignity. They took pride in their work, in skills passed down through generations. A cook who could rescue a sauce, a groom who could calm a panicked horse, a laundress who could remove impossible stains. These were forms of mastery, quiet but real. They formed bonds, friendships forged in shared labor. The scullion who shared his bread, the groom who let a tired servant sleep in the warm stable, the laundress who taught a young girl to mend. These acts of kindness, unrecorded and unremarked, were what made survival possible, and they endured. Through plague and famine, fire and war, they kept working. They kept the castle functioning, the fires burning, the meals served. Their labor built the world we remember, even if we don't remember them. So as you drift towards sleep tonight, perhaps you can hear them still. The clatter of pots in the kitchen, a soft murmur of voices in the dark, the scrape of a broom on stone. They're there, in a way, still working, still enduring, still reminding us that history is made not just by the powerful, but by the countless invisible hands that kept everything running. The castle stands because they stood. The Lord ruled because they served. The story continues because they lived it day after day in the hidden world behind stone walls. And now, as the fire burns low and sleep beckons, let their story rest with you. Let it settle into your dreams like dust on old tapestries. And when you wake, perhaps you'll remember that every grand building, every monument, every piece of history rests on foundations built by ordinary people doing extraordinary work. Good night, sleep well, and thank you for walking with me through the hidden world of the medieval castle.